For those of you on TikTok and Instagram, welcome. If you could please give me a heads up, let me know if you can see and hear all right. That would be very helpful. And you tell me when we are on YouTube and
Facebook are on. I'm waiting for volume.
Okay. Those of you tuning in through YouTube and Facebook, if you could please give us a thumbs up. Let us know if you can hear and see all right. That would be really helpful.
I can hear you on TikTok and see you.
TikTok, thank you.
And I didn't get to Instagram yet, but...
Can you guys hear us and see us okay on YouTube and Instagram? Facebook also. Please let us know. I don't want to get started till we have a thumbs up from each platform here.
Okay, Instagram's good.
Thank you from Instagram. Something's wrong with this. We have a... Just make sure that's plugged in down here.
It is.
I'm going to give this one more minute, give people a second to tune in before we get started.
Yeah, it's in.
We have it in?
Yeah.
All right.
Might have just been that initial bump of power.
Okay. So, Paul, let you check that one more time. Give me a heads up when I should get started. While Paul checks the tech here to make sure we have audio and visual.
Everything's good that I checked.
Okay.
Perfect on YouTube.
All right, excellent. So welcome, everyone. I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a Taino Arawak. I run a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy where I train people in their intuitive abilities internationally, online. And we have a church called Roots Revival Interfaith where we do Sunday services. This is one of the free mini classes with Q&A that I've been doing one per week since the pandemic hit. So this is called the Quarantine Series. And if you want to see a full list of classes that have gone up, you can hit here on YouTube at Ask Ivy, the playlist button, and that'll show you everything that we've been discussing. Now, tonight is a special situation. It's a little less of a class and more of a discussion. We have with us Reverend Dani Johnson. How are you, Dani?
I am wonderful, and I'm so excited to be here with you tonight to discuss this. So excited.
Me too. And can we hear her okay?
She'll be good on Facebook and YouTube. It's probably tougher on those.
Okay. So it may be more difficult for you guys to hear Dani on TikTok and Instagram. If that is in fact the case, you may want to switch over to YouTube now. So go to YouTube at Ask Ivy to tune in. And halfway through this discussion, we will be switching off the other platforms. So you may want to do that now. For those of you on YouTube, please give this a thumbs up. It is greatly appreciated. Feel free to subscribe if you're enjoying any of this content. And if you hit that bell, you'll get the notifications when I go live or I publish. We do encourage you guys to leave donations if you would like. And if you want to become a member here on YouTube, you can hit that join button for all kinds of extras and behind the scenes. So Dani came to me and said a few months ago, you know, Ivy, I think we need to do a class of discussion on the divine feminine, where it's been, where it's headed. And I was really feeling that from spirit at that time as well. One of the things that I've noticed about doing the quarantine series and all of these classes is that they tend to get scheduled at exactly the right moment. So even though it was several months ago, right, Dani, that you came to me and said it would be a long time before we could actually get it in the lineup. So that ended up being tonight. And with the events of the last week here in America, it's making perfect sense yet again as to why this was scheduled when it was. So tonight we are talking about the divine feminine and what it is that we need to pay attention to in returning to that energy, accepting that energy, and solving a lot of problems that we have due to the the constant, it's almost like a betrayal in every way, shape, and form to the feminine and what we have achieved over the years. So what we want to talk about here today are, not only some of the ways that we've seen the eradication of feminine power and how we can restore it, but I also encourage you guys to be part of the discussion and we take questions. So questions, comments, start putting them in the feed. Paul, my adorable producer, how are you, Paulie?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm excited for the show tonight.
Good. Paul will be taking those questions and comments and we'll be fitting them into the curriculum. If they're not really fitting in with what we're discussing, we will be taking them at the end. Okay. So Dani, I really just want to open with this discussion that you and I were having about the power of the feminine energy in the history of everything that we've built and how it's been disregarded. What did you really feel Spirit was saying to you when that was brought to your attention a couple months ago? I have no volume here.
Me either.
Hold on 1 second.
How about
Try
now?
again? Gotcha.
Perfect. Okay. It's interesting how Spirit gives us exactly what we need at the right moment. And this concept of the divine feminine had been coming up even when I was training with you in mediumship, because in mediumship, in our training, it's about balance. It's about finding balance. It's about accountability. And when Spirit said, this is a conversation for you and Ivy, one of the first things that kind of came up was, since the creation, since the beginning of time, it's like this duality, this masculine and feminine without competition co-created our universe, co-created our world. There has always been this masculine and feminine energy, sometimes simultaneously within the same person, but it's always been there. And this energy, this feminine energy, it's not just the nurturing and the protecting, it is fighting. It is that warrior spirit, but fighting from a place of, not just a place of love, but in terms of spiritual warfare. The fact that right now in this moment, the need for not just compassion and understanding, but we're in spiritual warfare right now. And a lot of the feminine entity, like the feminine deities from the beginning of time, from lots of different perspectives, they fought from a spiritual perspective through persuasion, through connection, through understanding, and not just brute force.
That's right.
And so that was kind of like the where Spirit said, this is why at this moment it is so critically important. And some of the divine feminine entity, like deities, that have been a part of us since the beginning of time in different spaces. You being Taino, there's Adobe. I've been reading about Taino culture because it's like, it's no coincidence that you are my teacher, my sister, my friend, my mentor. And it's just reading about it and understanding there's this beautiful feminine healing, fertility, Earth Mother that is about creation. And in terms of like African, Puerto Rican, Cuban, there's Yemaya and Oshun and Oya. Like these are entities and deities who fought spiritual warfare, but resorted to physical brute violence only when it was necessary. And like even in Europe, like Bridget, I think, who's like healing and fertility. So it's just like these beautiful, feminine, strong deities and energies have been with us since the beginning of time, but very often they are minimized to the comfortable aspects of who they are. They're not lifted up as the ones who help to create our world. They're the ones who, so that's kind of like where Spirit was showing us,
Well, it's funny because we didn't discuss it at the time when you and I were booking this, but I went to Salem. I went out to Boston, and on the way to Boston, my route goes right past Harriet Tubman.
Mm.
And I had stopped to channel Harriet Tubman and do a daily message because I had channeled her a couple months prior, and I wanted to see if there was anything more to say. And so I channeled her, and it was a dynamic message, very much along those lines, talking about fighting, having a goal, not losing focus. She gave this, very brilliant message. And I later was researching her, and I had never heard this. When you said, we get a watered down version of powerful female figures, watered down version that people are comfortable with, have learned to be comfortable with. Well, it was really interesting. It crossed my path in YouTube somehow, a video on Harriet, an interview or something she had given. And she talked about how she listened intuitively to know. She said that God, the Holy Spirit, would tell her. So she was following her mediumistic abilities. She was following her gut instinct, her psychic abilities. And that is what ultimately she listened to. Not the weather, not when, not how, or when she logically knew it was time, or when people wanted to go and she would help them escape. She listened to that gut instinct. And when she was told that it was time, she would move, and never failed. Okay. Never failed, never missed a journey. But it's funny too, that you mentioned that brute force that would be applied. Again, that watered down version that we like to give of powerful women to make it so that they never went to battle. Only men go to battle, right? Well, Harriet was known to pull out a weapon and let you know. She would put you back in your place. If you threatened to run, she would threaten to wipe you out before you could do that and cost everyone else their freedom and their safety. And that just came to mind, how ironic the timing was on all of that.
Wow. That is incredible. That is
so many of us understand this.
Yeah.
And so many of us are doing this without talking about it. Yeah. And we all, male or female, need to get back in touch with that intuitive ability, that ability to channel directly from Creator's energy. That's what keeps us safe. That's what helps us win those battles. And I agree 100%. That's exactly where we are in time right now in 2021.
That is incredible. And the way you described the health and the wellness of the whole as opposed to the individual. That is something that we absolutely need right now. When you just describing Harriet having to threaten with a necessary force, like, listen, you can't take yourself out, you can't take the rest of us out. You just can't do it.
That's right. And one of the visions that I've had about this upcoming year, and we recently had Christina Del Rey, our astrologer, on talking about the planets and what things will look like in 2021. It is, I believe she refers to it as the age of Aquarius, and getting back into that community-oriented mindset, that humanitarian mentality. And we are seeing very, very clearly right now some of the things that we witnessed last week with the Capitol here in America. being invaded, and the goal of those people ultimately was to murder, some of our leaders that represent that humanitarian collective effort. And one of the things I've seen as a psychic medium going forward from 2020 into 2021 is a return to that divine feminine, which is all about receiving and channeling and bringing healing and a collective energy and effort to our purpose as human beings. And it's so enlightening and empowering to know that the astrology backs that.
Yes, absolutely.
As does the numerology, as I understand it.
It does. Absolutely. The astrology, and listening to Christina speak about the astrology and how it is playing into and will play into this upcoming year is incredible. And with our year, this year of the five representing liberation and freedom, and an unwillingness to remain in the status quo. And the fact that in this upcoming year, we are going to see, in order for something to be built up new, we need to break down what is there. And the thing is, what was so almost serendipitous, painfully serendipitous about what happened last week is the fact that folks who, there was a paradigm shift for a lot of folks who have been holding on to a certain kind of like way of feeling and thinking. And there always is like, there's that moment of shift. And sometimes that shift happens voluntarily. And sometimes the shift happens, it is forced upon us. Yeah. So it's like liberation or nothing. And it's like this world, our universe is showing us and telling us that we have no choice but to release a lot of the systems and break the systems when they're not being voluntarily released, like literally breaking them in order for a long overdue liberation that has been due to folks for a long, long time.
Absolutely. And how, I wanted to ask you about that too. How do you see the attempts at eradicating feminine power being in alignment with, the racial injustices?
It's so the way that these systems work, it's like very often the folks with the least amount of systemic power, so folks who are identify as LGBTQ, who might identify as a person of color, who might identify as differently abled, anyone who might identify in a way that is not deemed as like the norm. Any identity, especially with gender, they're even more vulnerable. So we see folks who, even looking like at Black Lives Matter, like the movement from especially that was really prevalent this summer. It was actually created by 3 queer Black women. And every so often, there's a collective of folks who come back and say, well, this is how it started. This is who created it. And so and this is a constant, especially among women of color. And it is and to make this clear, patriarchy and sexism affects everyone. It affects women, it affects men, it affects anybody of all genders. Yet it is that much more difficult to call out, and that much more difficult to stop.
And on that note, I just want to mention one of the members here on YouTube had an interesting dilemma, and that really fits in nicely with what we're talking about here. So I post for the members behind the scenes every time we have a class or discussion coming up, what would you like to focus on, or where are you having an area of concern, a problem? And we had a member named Jill who said, I struggle with being dismissed. I can say something and I will either be totally ignored, or even better, the person I said it to will regurgitate it back to me and steal it and basically act like it is their own, and pretend that I never had this idea at all. So one of the things that I think is still going on, just widely and getting worse all the time, is that the amazing ideas, the power, the effort, all of the accomplishments, that we have as females, or like you said, LGBTQ minorities, are vulnerable to being stolen. It's not just always being about being run over, which we all know. We all know about manspeak and, being dismissed and having to work 10 times as hard to get less than half as much. But how about what gets stolen? Yes. Literally just take it right. Any idea that you have at work is vulnerable. Everything has to be trademarked and copyrighted and protected by lawyers, or it's lifted. And I personally, when I read Jill's complaint here, it reminded me and was a trigger for me personally that I have now had my curriculum at the academy stolen 12 times, 3 white males and all the rest white females. And I have noticed a pattern there, that it is, again, when you said the patriarchy has infiltrated everything and everyone, I find that white women find it acceptable to steal what is rightfully mine, and that white males find it acceptable to lift and steal what is rightfully mine. I think it's unfortunate that we have to guard what we create. So it isn't even that what we create isn't appreciated. It's recognized as valuable and lifted so often. Yeah. So, and Jill is, a white female, but there it is again, that ability to overlook what females have created in such a way where it's almost expected that if they say it out loud, they cause the problem and it should be stolen. Like you almost deserve it, like an attitude of, well, you put it out there, so you were asking for it.
Yes. And that, I so appreciate you sharing that, Ivy, and I appreciate Jill for lifting that up as well. Yes. Because what Jill went through is something that, especially with these systems, like movements, like literally in every movement, there have been brilliant women who were organizers and activists who were the brainchild and the architects behind some of the most dynamic and most historic social movements. Yet we have to dig to find who they are. We have to dig to find their history. We might find one line about them, but then of course, the men who were present, they deserve their recognition as well. However, when it comes to the strategy, when it comes to movement work, there's so much strategy and thought put behind it, and it very often is women who are the brainchilds behind it. And when you speak about this, and this is an invitation right now with the moment that we're living in, this is an invitation for men, both who were born biologically cisgendered men and trans men, because having conversations with friends who are trans, recognizing that they now have male privilege, being willing to bring and use that male privilege to stand up for and to call out patriarchy when we see it. And interestingly, one of the aspects of mediumship training that I absolutely love, that I love with you, and one of the things that I just love about mediumship is life contracts. And for a lot of men, again, both cisgendered and trans, and even those who might not necessarily ascribe to the binary. And I'm recognizing and seeing that there are a lot of folks who, in their life contract, especially male identified, where whether either in midlife or later in their life, they use their privilege to help to eradicate these systems. They recognize the privilege, they recognize what they have benefited from these systems, and now find it their responsibility and being called to use every bit of their privilege to not only benefit the women around them individually, but to break down these systems. And interestingly, I was thinking about him earlier today. One of a friend who would have absolutely adored you and who you channeled, Seth Hayes, who was in the Black Panther Party and served 40 years in prison. And I remember you, like one of the only times I've ever seen you, be physically moved when channeling someone. And before he passed, I know that it was his life contract to help lift up other women who were in movement work. And he recognized and he talked about his own journey and realizing in the 60s, what patriarchy meant in movement work. And when he would see a woman here in Buffalo, New York, where he lived, and who was in movement work, he would not only lift them up, but he would encourage them and talk things through and make sure that they stayed in the work that they were doing. So especially from last week, so as horrific as it was, seeds are being planted.
That's right.
Seeds are absolutely being planted. And this privilege, it feels like there will be a different kind of a change and a different kind of a shift that has needed to happen. There have been calls for it to happen, but it is, there will absolutely feel like a recognition that there has to be.
It's time. And I think that when we have people like your friend Seth, you said he was part of the Black Panther movement.
Mm-hmm.
He was, incarcerated for a long time. He came out, is helping activists and passed. But I remember that day when I was channeling him and he wanted me to show you rows and rows and rows of people that you were helping to get free from a toxic system that was built against them. And so we have people like Seth on the other side, and we don't want to overlook this, leading and guiding us. We have a lot of airy-fairy ideas about guides and, angels and all these things. And we need to get down to some reality. What we actually have are people like Seth backing us, pushing forward all the time, showing us where and how we are to apply our energies. And we're so fortunate in that. And I think we're going to see so many more people come to the forefront instead of saying, I'm a healer, I'm a light worker, I want to get into readings. I see them getting into activism. I see one life contract after another getting into reform and activism and, politics and all of it. And it is tremendous. I've never seen anything like that in my years of doing the psychic mediumship work. I love how too, you were talking about transgendered and cisgendered and, people who are recognizing even like later in life that they have a role. These men realize they have a calling, a responsibility. They feel that they are the voice, and we need all hands on deck. We need that right now in the same way that we needed our Black population here in America to get in there and vote, and our, Black women, our Hispanic women, we needed them to take the upper hand and start turning this country around. And we did it. We need men to step forward in this movement. This is, without this, we don't evolve.
Yes.
I believe that there is a collective effort that's necessary to really level up. Otherwise, we just sort of stay where we've always been, which is kind of like treading water, and that's the universal order of things, is that there's always a bigger lesson. And right now, the bigger lesson is that we all come together. It's not necessarily about you. It's not, about whether or not it's a fight you need to fight for yourself. I was watching this comedian the other day, and he was talking about how his father attacked him at the dinner table because at school that day, a kid was getting bullied at lunch. And he said, well, where were you? And he said, well, I was on the bench, so it wasn't my problem. And he said, so what happened to this this fellow student who was getting bullied, and he said, "Oh, well, he got beat up." And he said, "I'm sorry, and where were you?" And he said, "Well, I was on the bench, so I wasn't involved." And he confronted him with the Holocaust.
Yes.
And he said, "Well, this is what the Nazis did, and this is what supporters of the Nazis did." And he said, "So that's how dinner was in my house." And I thought that was awesome, because that's really where we are right now. And those who decide to be passive in it are just as much supporting it as those who are actively causing the problem.
Absolutely. And that was an incredible example of the way that Jewish folks were brutalized and have been brutalized. And like we talk about generational trauma, the generational trauma of what the Holocaust has done is horrific. And so that was a perfect example of how we cannot stay on the sidelines. Like there is no sideline, there is no fence.
No, there isn't. That's the illusion that the patriarchy in this situation has created, is that there is a sideline, that there is a fence, that there is a divide. There is no divide. It is not an option. And, if people don't participate and do what's right, we have karma, we have universal law in effect, but that's not helping. People having bad karma isn't helping us to evolve and to restore. John Mulaney was the comedian I was just referring to, John Mulaney's stand-up. I think his last show where he did that. I also wanted to bring up the concept here of women who are known to tap into their intuition, being mislabeled as witches or demonic in the past, and literally burnt to the stake and murdered for that, and men as well. So that anyone who identified with any form of what could be mislabeled as witchcraft, we look at the Salem witch trials. Ironically, Tituba was a Taino Arawak. Now they thought she was. They tried to say, she was a slave, and then they tried to say, she was from Jamaica or Barbados. They weren't sure. She was Taino, and so everything that started there at Salem and ended up, erupting into what it was, and of course had been going on in Europe for a long time before that. It all really breaks down to the patriarchy wanting to take something like intuition and make it a demonic activity worthy of the death penalty, and this is really where we find our power, like we spoke of earlier, is through channeling and getting into your psychic ability and your empathic abilities. It's not just what we need to tap into to heal ourselves. It's what we need to tap into to heal each other, the world around us, and come together as a community. And so we're still breaking down so many labels there.
Absolutely. And I love how you speak about the intuition, because it's like literally answering that call. It comes through God. It comes through that light and through our guides. When we know that something isn't right, we might be afraid, we might be scared, we might be trembling, but there's a voice that says, you have to do this. And it's unwavering. And it will haunt us if we don't do it. Absolutely. When you were speaking about community as well, and like that solidarity, stepping forward, it's in us needing all hands on deck, especially from men in any way that they identify. It's kind of thinking back to like with Dr. King, like Martin Luther King, and how he called for everyone of every race, ethnicity to come and help with the movement, not out of inclusivity. I mean, that it was a part of him, but that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was there was no way of being able to fight this fight without everyone on deck. It's a matter of numbers. So if you want a system broken down, you literally need everybody. You need all hands on deck. We can't eradicate patriarchy and sexism with only women. It just can't happen. It's a matter of numbers. As strong as we are, and brilliant as we are, we absolutely like we are.
That's right.
Yeah, the thing is, like we can't do it on our own, and that solidarity and being willing to take a risk. And I love when, for so many of us light workers, it is being willing to stand up. It's being willing to walk on our path. It's being willing to do the work that we promised to do before we came here, regardless of what it might look like, as you were describing before. And so being willing to like put that privilege on the line, to risk how it might be received when one does it. But at the end of the day, who are we accountable to? We're accountable to God or higher power, to something greater than ourselves.
Amen. And when you said that it haunts you, I mean, it literally does. I see clients 24/7 who are haunted by something they would not do. And it usually has to do with the throat chakra. They did not speak their piece, or they did not stand up for what was right. I've been reading since I was 15 years old, people. And before that, accidentally reading. I have never had so much choking. People are choking. They've got thyroid issues. They've got thyroid cancer. They've got lung problems, esophageal issues, sinus problems. They've got allergies for the first time. Where's all this coming from? You must speak. You must speak for what's right. You cannot pull a John Mulaney and sit on the bench. This is it. This is the big show. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is it. 2021 is going to be a huge test for that. I know you and I were also talking a little bit about a transition that occurred, I want to say about maybe 6 months ago or so, where there was a definitive shift in the energy. And you and I both reached out to each other within like 24 hours. And we were like, you feel that? There's something's going on. And what we had heard was basically that karma was going to speed up tenfold in either direction. Do you remember that conversation?
1,000%. Absolutely.
And then it was like right around that time, I was hearing that those that were intentionally deciding to be on the wrong side of things, if they were deliberately going to be feeding the dark energies, not standing up for the light, they were going to be, it was almost like a karmic retribution, where we were going to see more mental illness, anger, aggression, suicide rates, things like this. And that matched the Hopi prophecy. And so we ended up doing a free mini class on this called The End Times. And if you guys want to listen to it, it was, Dani Johnson, our numerologist, Christina Del Rey, our astrologist, and myself talking about the end times. Are we there? And depends on how you look at it, but that was an interesting class and discussion. And I think that, one of the things that we need to, focus on here, but I do actually want, before we get on to the next part of this, Paul, are we ready to turn these down and shift everybody over to YouTube at this point?
We sure are.
We're over a little bit more than what we planned on. Okay, so for everyone who tuned in everywhere else, we are going to start with questions and comments and sort of wrap up a little bit more we wanted to talk about here from a Native perspective. So thank you for tuning in. If you want to go to YouTube at Ask Ivy, we will see you there. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for class. Okay, so we want to give them a minute to transfer over. But for those of you that are on YouTube, if you have not already done so, post your questions and comments here. And Paul, do we have some?
Oh, yeah.
That we want to focus on? Because I also have one more from a member here that I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to sort of wrap up that thought. So, Dani, something you had said about the way people identify, whether you're cis, you're trans, or, you identify as queer, like whatever it is, this is the thing. And I have a son who's trans. I remember saying repeatedly, there are many ways, and when we look at a lot of the Native communities and we talk about things like two feather, right? Identifying with masculine and feminine energies simultaneously, and how healthy and received that concept is, of course. But, there There are some tribes that identified that there were 3 actual genders, or 5 or more. There are so many different ways to identify. And I think it's so important that we don't try to label or mislabel ourselves or get backed up against a wall. Don't let society and the patriarchy tell you you're one thing or another, right? And that can help us to come to terms with the divine feminine in itself.
Absolutely. When you spoke about the Hopi prophecy and absolutely the many ways that gender is present within Native culture, it's no coincidence that in many Native tribes where they're matriarchal, where the bloodline goes through the mother, that where it's just so for something that is so natural, for it to be embraced in such like a natural way, it's no coincidence that that women are not only empowered but and trusted and listened to and revered. And so for folks who absolutely are in any way feel as though they have to choose one dichotomy or another, absolutely not. No.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things that has worked for us girls, for anyone who taps into their feminine energies, we have been safe, especially here, in America, as being the only ones who can identify with emotions or process what you're feeling or be a part of a community and caretaking for others. And that has really helped us to hold on, to a lot of that. And I see male students also come through the academy, train in psychic mediumship and empathic abilities, and tap into those feminine energies and do incredibly well. It's not to say this is just for women and this is just for men. It's all the same when we tap in. And I do feel blessed in so many ways to, be a female and to be working from my intuition all the time. I know we have a lot of questions and comments coming in here. I just did want to get back to Jill's comment. The other thing that she had said here earlier, a problem that she's dealing with, is that she said, I'm always being talked over. It makes me rush and babble because I know that I'm about to be cut off. And that goes hand in hand with being dismissed.
See, and that's to have to anticipate that is work. That's emotional labor. That's like having to anticipate how you're going to be dismissed, how you're going to be treated, and then have to counteract it and prepare for it. That is such a trap. That's such an injustice, and especially when there is such brilliance that is being presented. She deserves to be able to own in the fullness of her idea and her ingenuity.
And again, we're not even just talking about just the men at her job doing this. We are probably also talking about the women, because patriarchy affects everyone. Women will also dismiss other women. And how do we treat children? We say you are to be seen, not heard. We cut children off. We don't listen to children. The fact that women get treated as though they are children, right, in the workplace is absolutely outrageous. I love when Kamala was like, I am speaking.
That's right.
I am speaking. It was like, do not cut me off. This is not your turn. We have a time clock to prove it. But that's really very much where we are. So I think that Jill's problem here in a couple different ways sums up what so many of us are going through. And I'm sure, Paul, you have a ton of those to talk on. I do want to get over. I had one more from a Bernadette member who said, I struggle with my ideas being taken seriously. If there are guys in the process who have been doing something longer than I have. I struggle also with ageism. A guy is distinguished and experienced, whereas a woman is over the hill and obsolete.
And that, appreciate her bringing that up as well. Wow, the depths of the privilege that come with gender is just, it's astounding.
Ridiculous.
It really is. It is. And it's just having to prove oneself and having to prove oneself as still worthy of being listened to, and that they still add value and are valuable within spaces. That's something that is completely unacceptable.
Right. Like, because these guys in the room with her are old, she couldn't come up with any innovative ideas, possibly, because they have that privilege of age. And the older she is, right, the older any of us are, we are disposable, when in actuality our value is so tremendous. And we've got everyone brainwashed into believing the polar opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yes. And when you teach about, in your mediumship course, and you teach about self-accountability, and I think you posted something not long ago about like what we've been through. We're not at fault for what we've been through, but it's our responsibility to heal the things that we have been taught. And when we recognize that we're doing that, it's our responsibility. And this is part of like spiritual growth and development, where we recognize that we are perpetuating a system or perpetuating a certain kind of stereotype. It's our job to stop ourselves, recognize it, call ourselves out, and then do something different, and then act differently. And it feels like that is just as a part of self-accountability and holding oneself accountable as is checking our ego, making sure that we are in the light, making sure that that our intentions are as pure as they possibly can be. So that's it's all connected to spirit.
For sure. And we did a free mini class on this called Your Fear of Leveling Up. And while that wasn't the intention to go more in the feminist direction, a lot of it did, because it was mostly women who tuned in and talked about areas where they do have this fear of leveling up because they don't want to have the battle. You know, a woman who comes into a position of power is called fat and ugly and is disregarded and is put down and is attacked. That's not something men typically go through. You know, they level up and it's a congratulations and a pat on the back and they get to start reaping all the benefits. And a woman goes through battle. So that class, if you find that you are one of these people who, you know, you're inhibited in any way, you may want to take that, your fear of leveling up. But yeah, exactly what Dani was just talking about there, and how we have a responsibility, all of us, to identify the different ways that we are contributing to this problem, and to also identify the ways that you were trained to be part of the problem. You have to unlearn everything you've learned. You reach an age where that is your responsibility. We can't keep shrugging that off. Polly, what do we have coming in here?
We have a lot. This is a very great class tonight. Everyone's been adding to it. So I want to start with one of the first ones here that came in from Alex. She said, I've had issues with overly masculine energy to the point of degrading me as a female. So much competition and fighting to keep my integrity.
Well, and Dani and I are just going to kind of chime in back and forth, you know, on these with any advice that we might have. The first thing that I'm noticing when I'm reading this is the word competition, fighting to keep your integrity. And what I have found over the years is that the majority of men, sadly, and I do mean the majority, as well as certain groups of females, you know, not ones that are so much like me, but ones that are different, they tend to see me as a problem. And so just that immediate upon meeting, they seem to feel that I am a threat to them in some way. So I become a challenge. And I think it's awesome that you create that energy, that when you show up somewhere, you're seen as the problem with a man. But I also, you know, I think that holding on to that level of integrity that you're speaking of is also key, because we don't want to get down in the dirt with the dogs. You don't want to lower yourself to where they are. They're coming from a place of ego, which is control and fear, because they are being tested, and they are being tested. The whole system is tested by a woman like me, like you, Alex, like Dani, right? And so they know that on some level, even if they're not fully processing it, whether they're male or female. And so it's important that you remember to hold your ground and not allow for your energy to be drained. Hold on to your moral compass, your ethical code of conduct, and keep that integrity, because that's really where your power is.
Absolutely. And unapologetically, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Ivy just said. And unapologetically, and even when it doesn't feel good, and even when you might anticipate walking into a room and being greeted with that energy, you still walk in the fullness of who you are, because you don't know who's watching. And literally, because it's like all of our, we're all connected, and you simply walking into a room and owning your power could literally empower another woman to do the same. And like, you literally could change someone's life simply by standing in the fullness of who you are. So continue being who you are, for sure. Don't let anybody take that from you.
Unapologetically. We're going to have to hashtag that under this. Unapologetically. Yeah, I posted something yesterday. I think it was on Facebook, and it was this woman walking down the sidewalk with her hat and her makeup and her handbag and her heels. And the women were looking at her crooked. The men were looking at her crooked. The dogs were looking at her crooked. People were gawking at her, and she was just walking. She was just strutting her stuff. And it said, "Burn so bright, you burn their eyes."
Right.
And we have to.
That's
we have
right.
to. And that sort of plays off Bernadette's feeling about ageism, and the older you shine brighter. We need more aging individuals who are willing to come out and say, I'm a beautiful, powerful specimen. I will not cower.
Yeah. And let the rest of them catch up. They'll catch up one day.
Right, they'll catch up.
They'll catch up.
Love it. We have another one?
Yeah, this one is from Conjuring Woman. She says, women of African descent are beginning or continuing their travels back towards African spirituality, i.e. Santeria, Voodoo, etc. The founders of BLM are involved in ATR. And she went on to say, we see those Orishas or Lwa as empowering us to fight for true equity and liberation.
1000%. Conjuring Woman, so appreciate you sharing that. I'm going to ask permission if I can. Yes. Okay. So I'm actually wearing, in terms of African tradition, I, through a very sacred process, found out that I am the daughter of Oshun, and I'm wearing her Eleke tonight. And she is one of the Orishas who we spoke about earlier today, who watches over us, who protects the witches, protects the mediums and the empaths, and makes sure that if anything comes in our path that isn't quite right, she will stand up for us in the most loving way, but in the most direct way. And absolutely, this return, in a sense, like this kind of coming home in a lot of different ways, is showing us how to fight. It's showing us how to fight in these, and for longevity as well. So thank you. I appreciate you lifting that up. And thank you for giving me the moment to ask, because I always have to ask if you can say
when,
that.
yeah, you never know with them. What exactly we're supposed to say, when, and how. I know it's this ongoing dialogue. As we speak left, we're also speaking right brain.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. But I was going to say too, Conjuring Woman, the first part of her message here is off my screen, but I think I remember some of it. You were talking about, okay, good. So women of African descent. One of the things that has been a huge focus in the last few years here at the Ivy League Psychic Academy, Spirit has been leading me more and more and more to find the people that belong here. Advertising is always tricky, hitting the right groups of people. And we're building through word of mouth for the most part. We were using Facebook, and due to the hate campaigns, we had to stop using that for paid advertising. So everything for the last 9 years, 99% of the time has been done organically. And one of the things that has happened is that Spirit is using more of the Hispanic and Black community, women in particular, to come because the roots are so naturally there. It is so innate to be able to do this kind of healing work, this light work, this channeling. And I noticed too, something else you had mentioned with voodoo. For those of you watching, if you are Black or you're Hispanic, you may not know that you do have Taino, or I sometimes refer to it as Arawak roots. And, due to genocide, so much has been wiped out, but I really do beg you to do some research and find out if that is in fact part of your roots, which was the foundation of the voodoo religion, in itself. So there's so much more being uncovered with that sort of roots revival mentality. And it's no coincidence, because Spirit has been pushing for that harder and harder, I would say the last 3 years, in a really intense way. It's very exciting.
It is. And Ivy, like seeing the similarities and the commonalities between like Taino when reading and understanding the violence that Taino Arawaks endured, and there's similarities in terms of like the Middle Passage and when Africans were captured and stolen and taken to the Americas, was this mass suicide, and reading about the mass suicides among Tainos. And in a short period of time, there were so many mass suicides. When I was reading that, I was just astounded to see that, and it broke my heart to think about it in that way. And in that same way, when the slave ships, there were so many folks, Africans, who decided, you know what, I'm not going to take this. I'd rather death, and literally jumped off of and committed mass suicide. And in terms of the Orisha, a conjuring woman like Yemaya, one of a beautiful saint who traveled with us from Africa to the Americas because she wouldn't leave her children. And it's all connected. And when recognizing the connection between the mass suicides in terms of Taino and Africans, it was just, it was heartbreaking, and realizing the harmful and the hurtful connection between.
In its own way, it's fairly liberating, because what we knew, right, what we know is that life continues. Yeah. And that if we want to stop perpetuating, we don't want to see our children, hurt in that way. Some will decide to go that far. And it is another myth that we talk about pretty commonly here at the Academy, is suicide. And how there are so many negative, religious, sort of agendas behind, like, you never do that, and that's of the devil, and that leads you to hell. And what we knew was that it is in its own way liberation, and it's okay. And what we see with people, not that I encourage people to commit suicide, but that it is often well thought out and planned and occurring because that individual does not want to perpetuate pain of others. They don't want to be part of the dark system. And so they exit as peacefully as they can, and they show up in the light beautifully. And so there's just a lot going on there that we have to unpack and break down, but it's very, very powerful. Yes. Wow. So what else do we have? We just got to Conjuring Woman. We have another one.
Yes.
Okay.
This one is, let me scroll up a bit. This one's from Jill.
Okay.
So it's so interesting you brought up male privilege. One of the people that routinely do this to me is a white male. And when I mention white male privilege, it's met with anger and yelling.
Well, nobody likes to be confronted. And as we saw in the Capitol this past week, when privilege is threatened, people would rather commit suicide, die in a fit of rage, kill, murder, steal, So to see that agitation come out of people when they're just a little bit confronted with the reality of their privilege and their position, really makes you wonder, what else is going on under there, and what else people are capable of, especially when they come together collectively to prevent any more from happening, because they believe that what is their right is being stolen from them. And I always say this, at the core, the real root issue of all this is that these people maybe have no personality. They're not living within their life path. They have no sense of value whatsoever. So the little bit that they have is based on the color of their skin and their privilege. They're offering nothing to the world around them. That's the real problem.
Yeah. And that anger, I'm wondering if I would imagine, Jill, if when that anger comes out, it is possibly something to the effect of, well, I didn't ask for it. I might have this privilege, but I didn't ask for it. I was born with it. I might have it, but I didn't. It was something that was just basically given to me and granted to me. And it's just, okay, yes, we have no control over how we are born, the color of our skin, how we come here. Yet we are responsible for our actions once we are here. We're responsible for how we treat people, the impact, whether it's intended or not. We are responsible for the way that we show up and the impact that we have on other people, and recognizing if we can do something different, we have to, even when it's uncomfortable. And something that we've spoken about, you talk all the time about in mediumship. I remember from like almost day one, it's like being comfortable in the uncomfortability. Yes, it's uncomfortable recognizing when we have privilege and we didn't ask for it, and yet we benefit from it, and it is harmful. Yet at the same time, sitting in the uncomfortability, knowing that by doing so, we are helping ourselves and everyone around us, and that we're creating a better world for ourselves, and we're raising the collective vibration of our world.
We're seeing such an interesting transition too, because, white privilege, masculine privilege, it's a gift that I think many people are wanting to return. With or without a receipt, you can have it back. And why is that? It's because it requires a lot of work. Whereas the rest of us, I always thought of myself as a brown girl. I authentically have very curly hair, and my skin gets quite dark, and I was always harassed my entire life growing up, in and out of even court for adults harassing me, and my mother would end up in court. Just one terrible event after another, and I thought my entire life that I would never be able to find peace with it. But you know what? The day has come where I will tell you, I am starting to see these things as a gift. I am very comfortable, in my own skin. And I'm finding there's so many of us that are finally reaching a point where we can, start celebrating different aspects of this that maybe we never thought we would see. Whereas people like this gentleman Jill's referring to are going to have to do the work. Welcome to our world. Now you're going to have to do the work. And that's, again, at the root of having to be introspective and identify what you need to unlearn and how you need to be a better person. That's a lot of effort. And I think people just they also don't want to be confronted with the fact that it's going to be a painful process. It's going to be a lot of effort. Yeah. So funny. Paul, we have another one?
Yes. This one's from Liz. Okay. It says, when you have the privilege to be heard, use your voice. For those who are oppressed, it's your responsibility.
That's right.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add to that. That's it. It's your responsibility. And people will say, well, how dare you tell me? Just the fact that you're running from it shows that it's more your responsibility than I can even say. Yep. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, we have another one.
Yeah, and then similar to that, playing with the privilege again, Jill had made a comment that she just corrected to say that we need our allies and we need to be allies.
Yes.
So as someone who is not feminine or female, that's a question to ask from my side is, just like a white male.
Yeah.
When you would ask, during the BLM stuff, and you'd say, how can I be the best ally? How can I ally? What can I do? And then similar question here is, what is best for me to do to be an ally here?
Yeah.
Well, and I love that. I love that you did that. I saw you do that on a regular basis, especially around the time of George Floyd, and you putting forth the effort to think of what it was that you had to say as a white male about it, and then being ready to, because what's one of your big platforms, right? Social media, to be ready to fight those comments, to fight those attacks, to fight those people, right? Those white supremacists or any people in your social circle, people, that you had grown up with all your life. Well, it gets real colorful real quick, and you took it on, you took it head on and did not back down. And that's so important that we all continue to also stay in your lane, understand that not everything is for you to fight. Don't get burnt out. Don't bicker with clowns. Don't feed a fool. Don't give them more. Don't get down in the dirt with the dogs, but know what is your calling to say, when you should say it, and never back down. Get it out there.
Absolutely. And Paul, you asking the question is an act of solidarity right there. Like you asking, how can I, where should I? Like that in and of itself is such a show of respect, because in just about any kind of movement where the folks who are most affected by whatever issue that it is, they are the folks who are most familiar with how to fix it, how to fight it. And you asking, how can I? And myself, having known you since going on like a year and a half now, feels like going on 2 years. I've watched you. I've seen you do that. One of the reasons why I have such respect for you, and I swear, like they're watching me and they know where it's coming from. I have such respect for you is the way that you, from a genuine perspective, how you respect and give Ivy her space to be in the fullness of who she is. I've respected that about you from day one. And it's like I watched it and it was like, and I was very struck with the genuineness of it, and you genuinely enjoying seeing Ivy in the fullness of her strength. Like that is something that I have had respect for you from like the first class that I took, and to this moment, to this day. And you've been unwavering with it. You haven't faltered. I shouldn't say faltered, but you've been so consistent with it. And in your the way that you genuinely ask questions, like knowing how sincere it is, you are someone who I feel safe with. So that's real.
That's so funny you say that. Paul being a white male, that's hard. As a Hispanic female, it's sometimes hard, to be in an interracial relationship. You're like, this person can't identify. They didn't go through the battles. They're not going to see the world the same way. They're not going to understand me. It's hard. Those are tricky partnerships. But I will say this, when you said you feel safe, dealing with Paul, that was the first thing that I noticed about Paul, was like, he celebrated me as a person, not as a woman. He celebrated my accomplishments, my achievements, even though he didn't even fully understand everything that we do here. He was open-minded, he wanted to explore, and he just came to the table from day one and said, how can I support you? Do you need new lights for your show? You want me to help film this? You want me to produce, can I help you produce this show, or whatever I have going on? And he has been solid in that, will back me in anything. And it's amazing when we can come together and surpass racial tensions. It's even more amazing when we can come together and surpass gender tensions, just be what we're meant to be, two supportive people. And yeah, we accomplish that most of the time, right? Most of the time. We have another one.
Yeah, we got a nice, good one from Empathic Alex again, who says, white males have had to put me in my place all my life until I said, I'm not listening anymore.
Good.
Awesome.
And we all need to get there, because yes, it will, it's going to continue. So we also have to focus so much more. And I'm looking forward to the upcoming, what I believe is going to be 8 years and beyond, especially here in America. Politically, where we're going to see more laws put in place to make sure that has to happen. We need, in order for it to happen, I think we need laws to back it. It's not going to be enough that we just keep standing up it. There has to be penalty for the abuse against that.
Absolutely. And Alex, that is Absolutely, 1,000% agree with Ivy with regard to like policies and practices that are on the books, and especially for accountability. And I'm very proud of you for being intentional about not internalizing what's around. He's like, I'm not listening. Like, you're not taking it in. And the thing, even when we don't recognize it, it can have an impact on us. And then we have to take time to process it out and cleanse it out, and kind of like do self-care once that comes in, once it enters us. So you saying you're not listening, it's like, keep it out.
That's right. And that goes back to what the member Jill had posted that I talked about earlier too, where it's like, you feel rushed, you feel, dismissed and all of this. There is this component that requires you to fully, understand you are in control of what you give your time and attention and energy to. And it has to be like a light switch. Like, I go into different situations and I go, I don't care. I'm literally not paying any attention to them. I'm like a freight train. I'm going in here with my agenda. I'm going to say what I have to say. I'm going to get done what I have to get done. And if there are men in the room, I pay no attention. I will not be affected whatsoever. And you have to tune it out. So beautiful. And I think that is like not only step one, but the foundation of how you get it done every single time it needs to be done. That's awesome. We have another one?
Yeah, this is similar to that. Amy said that unfortunately many women deal with this. I just got louder.
There you go.
Yep.
That's right. Love it.
Yep. And so Jill had said it's even taught at home, like the subservience. She said, I'm Sicilian, and it's how women are taught. My dad was always preaching that the man made the rules. I was to dress and look how my mate wanted and obey. I'm not good at it, LOL.
Again, that we're children, that we're to be seen, not heard. And I don't know any good parent who even, would treat their child that way. It's inappropriate in every way, shape, and form. It's sexualizing. It's basically putting the blame, back on you, turning you into a victim, brainwashing you until you think you deserve whatever kind of abuse you end up getting from fitting within that system. The system is designed to stop us from protecting ourselves. And then once we're beaten down, to never complain.
Yes. And often it's like the strength of a woman is often determined by how much she can take, how much she can handle, how much she can endure on her own without asking for help. And that is like heralded as strength, when that is not the definition of strength. Being able to endurance in and of itself, sure, but being able to take so much, and that being the measure of a virtuous and a good woman, that is absolutely something that we have the right to unlearn.
That's right. And I just saw an interesting study that said something like, and I could be a little off on this, but something like 63% of white men will go into an emergency room and get meds for pain, whereas women and minorities, no. They like some outrageous number that they're forced to stay in pain, or their pain is dismissed. And so we tell them, it's not that bad, or you're making it up, or you're delusional, that it's more psychological or it's emotional, and so it is infiltrated the system in every way, shape, and form. Absolutely. That we deserve for some reason to be in that amount of pain. We have another one?
We have a couple questions.
Okay.
So this one is from Authentic Shorty.
Okay.
She says, I feel like this live is confirmation of finding my purpose, and I need to tap into my divine feminine. How did you find your purpose, Ivy and Dani?
Well, I'll go first real quick. I finally gave in. So when I was saying earlier that I think what's wrong with so many people's mentality is that they don't want to do the work and they don't have purpose in their lives. They're not living within their life contract. And that's really why they lean toward, masculinity and the patriarchy and racism and all these things, because they have nothing inside of value. So that's sort of a point that I came to in my life where I had been going for my degree. It had taken 10 years total. I got my degree in journalism. I had my kids. I had worked myself to the bone for those accomplishments. But, I was really going in the wrong direction at the time. And Spirit was showing me repeatedly that I was supposed to come out and start doing psychic mediumship readings for the public. And that was suicide, literally, to my career. And so I had fought that for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And I call it the breaking of the legs. It's a part 1, 2, 3 system ending on the breaking of the legs, where you get put in a timeout chair. The universe basically strips you of everything that you knew and everything you had earned and sticks you in a timeout chair until you identify that you're going the wrong way. And a lot of people won't, but I did. And so at that point, I gave in, and it was a difficult process. It was a long, dirty journey that eventually led to where I am now. And only now do I find that my journalism and all the things I worked really hard, toward are coming back around, and I'm able to use them. But I've spent the last decade contributing toward what I was called to do, and that was psychic, mediumship, empathic development, helping others to find their way, getting more involved with my Taino roots, my native roots, and understanding where I came from, how to bring healing, also ancestral healing, to my bloodline, and what all of this means for ultimately the healing of humanity. And I realize now I'm right exactly where I'm supposed to be, but at that time I wasn't. And so it was very, it took a lot of guts to just give in and to go through that metamorphosis. And sometimes that's what's required. For me, that was it. And once you're on path, you really don't go back off. It's not that easy to go back off. You have to go by blind faith. And once you do, you never want to go back.
For myself, it's similar to Ivy, where it's just I had to stop running from it. Ivy and folks who I have trained with know that. So my family being from New Orleans, my dad's family, and some of my mom's as well. Remember being like 4 years old and feeling and sensing there were things around me that we weren't in this world alone. Human beings were not the only entities that inhabited this world, our planet. And fast forward a little bit, it's interesting. I have a mentor. I have a mentor who I met in 2006, 2007. And this mentor and I would have these amazing conversations about spirit and spirituality. Fast forward a little bit, he passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. And May or June 2019, this mentor came to me in spirit and said, "Did you sign up? Have you signed up? Are you going to sign up?" And this mentor was incessant. There comes a point where when you're meant for light work, especially in mediumship, there is a few people potentially, but there's that one person who in spirit needles you and shows you what you're capable of and will be unwavering until you sign up. And it's interesting because the way that life works, I was actually a guinea pig in one of Ivy's tarot classes back in 2016. My friend Michael was a student in Ivy's class, and I went and was a guinea pig and got a reading. And the reading is still reading true today, almost 5 years later. And this mentor literally showed me in a vision, this is where you're supposed to go. And I did. And he relaxed a little bit, a little bit. And it's just my purpose. It's interesting how it's like when Ivy spoke about our tribe and the fact that Ivy talks, and I speak about all the time, like we have past life connection. It's like some things are just so familiar and so natural that it's just, there's just no way that we were only working in this lifetime. There's just no way. So that's how God is amazing.
That's funny that you mentioned that too, because Authentic Shorty, you're saying, I feel like I was led to this. Well, that's how Dani and I met, right? It would be 3 years before she attended the classes, but through a friend of a friend, somebody led her there to get a free tarot reading or whatever. That's how it goes. It's spirit showing you one step in front of the other, and all you have to do is willingly take it. Stop observing it and take it. That blind step out in faith. That's too funny. I love it. Yeah, and members of the soul group and soul tribe. The right people are put on your path for a reason, to show you. Yeah, we have work to do together. It's based on work contracts. Yes. Love it. We have another one.
Yep. This is from Kiana.
Okay.
She says, as a female, I feel I should act a certain way and I'm not being my complete, authentic self all the time. Like I'm not living up to how unique my soul is. How can I be the most me?
Look at gay flaming men. I am just always in awe. I think, there are certain people that are out there to shine and to so authentically be who they are and what they feel like, or even, trans people or people who are willing to go the extra mile to authentically be what they are. It is always eye-opening to look at someone who is living their authentic life, being their authentic self, and how bright they shine. They are a beacon of light for the rest of us. And so I would just do a little studying. I would do a little research, flip through TikTok, and in your Instagram account. And like when something strikes you, anyone, right? Even if it's watching this tonight, and you're like, these girls are authentically themselves, pay attention, study that person. What is it about them or their behavior that speaks to you? Because however it is that they're speaking to you and enlightening you, that's where you need to focus your own energy on yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And it feels like that, like you know where you want to step, but there's might be a little bit, understandably, a little bit of fear, a little bit of who am I going to be when I step out in this way? Sometimes it's like meeting who we're meant to be. That can sometimes be even a little bit nerve-wracking, but she's worth it. And so that feeling of like, okay, take a risk. How can, like the how, I agree with everything Ivy just said, and it's just step out, do one thing. Like say, for example, if let's say you wake up, and it's so funny how Ivy and I just like knew to wear red. We're red. We felt it. We knew it. We telepathically just knew it, right? So let's say if you wake up one day and you say, you know what, I'm going to wear my gray shirt, but I want to wear my fuchsia shirt. But am I going to be seen as too loud and too bright? And am I going to attract too much attention or something like that? But your soul says, I am supposed to wear this fuchsia shirt and I'm supposed to relish in it. You wear that fuchsia shirt and you allow yourself to be in the fullness of who you are and allow for the universe to just pour the energy into you that is probably waiting for you that day. So every so often, when and it's kind of like finding that sweet spot of pushing yourself and then processing. What does it feel like to have done that? And then do it again.
Take a screenshot, make it your screensaver. Yeah, you opened up a channel. That's right. You put on the fuchsia shirt. You opened up a channel. You took a step forward in that direction. That's so great. So it really is in the little things. I mean, it really is. That's how you start a huge journey, right? It's one small step in that direction of, in this case, liberation. I love it. I think that also says a lot for where we are in regards to the psychic mediumship. And that's a reason we started the church I referred to earlier, Roots Revival Interfaith. We've had 2 services so far. Reverend, Dani here is one of our reverends covering numerology. We have Christina Del Rey covering astrology, Paul Casey healing arts, and myself. And one of the things that, we focus on all the time is having a place to be spiritual and develop in our everyday habits, but with all of those elements that have been shunned. And so much of our uniqueness has been buried because we're not allowed to freely tap into our spirituality. And that is a safe place to do that, So there are so many different ways. Start going inward more also, even just 10 minutes a day can help a lot to show you where your intuitive abilities lie. What does that mean for you in the day-to-day? Do we have another one?
That's it for questions. There were a bunch of comments here that, were about ancestors being key. And
Yes.
You know, people. Liz didn't know Tituba was Taino.
Yeah.
So she's
A lot
going
of
to
people
research
didn't. Yeah,
that more.
that's really coming to the forefront now.
Lots of comments about Daughters of Ocean and being Orishas and researching that. So this is a fantastic. And Ivy and Dani, when you get the chance, once this is up, you scroll through the comments. You're going to love everyone's energy here. It was a huge night, and everyone here it was gorgeous on the right here. It's just pure. It's awesome, and you guys nailed it. And everyone here in the chat, you guys are all awesome. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Love it. So we're going to love our comment feed. Well, I look forward to that. Dani, any closing encouragement or statement or observation?
It is us having this conversation tonight, and grateful for everyone who joined us. So elated and thrilled for us to even be able to have this conversation. It is something that is healing for me tonight, something we've been really looking forward to. And for every person who shared that you may have felt either dismissed, marginalized, but you still show up, that is your feminine power. That is the divine feminine. The divine feminine shows up even when they might be faced with some sort of unnecessariness.
I love that. And I'm just going to play off of that in closing here that, to get to higher ground, we have to go through the battle. And so the things that rub you the wrong way, the things that don't look right, whether it's happening to you, it's happening to somebody else, that's where we need to look. And that's where we need to say, okay, there's something in me that's ready to fight. And now is our time to shine. Things are only going to get better from here. I could not be more excited about where we are as a society and internationally and spiritually. It is just absolutely huge. Dani, I love you so much. I'm so glad Spirit came to you, told you to do this. And now, yet again, we understand why it got booked right now.
Yes. Oh, I love you so much. You are my sister, my mentor, my friend, and so many other things in past lives. And one day we'll
for sure.
what they are.
I love it. And thank you, Polly.
You're very well.
Always doing such a great job with the comments. Look forward to reading all of these again. If you guys want to join, you want to become a member, hit that membership button. You want to leave a donation, you can hit that button. We have another free mini class coming up when?
That's Tuesday, the 19th.
Okay.
Which is Stop Overgiving Without the Guilt.
Ladies, stop overgiving without the guilt. The next free mini class coming up. All right, check out the rest of them on the playlist. Thank you again, Dani. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Spirit. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.